Oh, and good evening to you all. What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez. Sorry for the long intro with no sound. I unfortunately forgot to switch on my mic, so that was another oops moment. It's been a little bit of a technical difficulties day for me, as I've also had to switch my times and days when it comes to being on air this week. There's a lot of things have happened, but we are here live for another edition of Set Point. Once again, this is your boy, Teran Rodriguez. So we have a lot to talk about today in regards to a lot of teams clinching their spot in the NCAA Tournament, and there are some conferences that don't have a conference champion named yet. But as of right now, the automatic qualifier stands at 25 out of 32. So there are only 7 conferences that have not named a conference champion, which are the Big East Conference, the Big Sky Conference, the Big Ten Conference, the Big 12 Conference, the Missouri Valley Conference, the Pac-12 Conference, and the SEC. So, once again, those conferences have not decided a champion, while the automatic qualifiers that have punched their ticket into the NCAA Tournament are Albany, University of Central Florida, Pitt, Kennesaw State, Dayton, Winthrop, Hawaii, Towson, West Kentucky University, North Kentucky University, Princeton, Fairfield, Ball State, Howard, Colorado State, Sacred Heart, SC Missouri State, American, Samford, Stephen F. Austin, Alabama State, Denver, Texas State, New Mexico State, and last but not least, San Diego. So to those 25 teams, congratulations on making the NCAA Tournament. Let's give a round of applause for them. And I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in and for bearing with me. It's been a crazy 40 minutes to try to get live, but we are here live. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you to everyone who is tuned in and that's listening, especially on the East Coast. If you're on the East Coast and you're listening to this podcast, you are flat out amazing. You are amazing and you're a trooper. You definitely deserve the applause button, which I'll be hitting later on in the day or in this episode. But that's besides the point. The point is that let's get into some volleyball action. Now it's time, but first, before we get into a little story time with Teran, it's time we honor those who have made milestones. First off is Grace Butler of Central Michigan Volleyball, who amassed 2,000 assists as she has 2,027 career assists, which is number 5 in the Central Michigan program history. So once again, congratulations to Grace Butler. Then we have Elizabeth Gilley, who is the NCAA era of Cal Baptist. Yes, Elizabeth Gilley. Shout out to Cal Baptist and shout out to Larry B for helping me out. So once again, I definitely appreciate you, Larry. But anyway, Elizabeth Gilley, who is now the NCAA era leader for sets played with Cal Baptist with 419. That's a lot of sets played for one player. So great job to Gilley. And for you, Larry, I'll give her this. Lance up! Anyway, so next up is Southern Utah's Shannon Webb, who had the single-season 3-set kill record with 25 kills against Idaho. So big shout out to Miss Webb and the Thunderbirds. Then we have Kalia Lanier. Kalia Lanier, that's a name you all probably should know. That's a name probably Larry should know, as she is now second in all-time in kills in regards to USC's women's volleyball team, or Southern California. And once again, she surpassed Alex Jupiter for second all-time in kills at USC. She's right behind Sammy Bricio, and she could potentially have a chance to break Sammy Bricio's record of 2,095 kills at USC. And she's also 8th in regards to kills when it comes to in all-time kills in the Pac-12. So that's definitely huge for Kalia Lanier. She's definitely putting up Madden numbers. I remember during a weekend she had 40 kills, and she also had 34 the night after. So she's definitely big time, and she's definitely a huge part for USC. Then staying in the Pac-12, we have Audrina Fitzmaurice, who is now 5th all-time in Stanford history when it comes to blocks, as she now has 580 career blocks and counting. So she's with all the blocks she's putting up, she definitely should have her own roofing company. So there's that. And then staying with Stanford, Morgan Hentz is now the all-time dig leader at Stanford, as she has 2,148 and counting. So big congratulations to her. And she also got a Defensive Player of the Week in the Pac-12 as well. Next we're going to travel over to the Big Ten Conference, where Lexi Sun has surpassed 1,000 career kills. Big shout out to her, considering she comes from Southern California, and was a former Gatorade Player of the Year. She is a straight-up baller. She is definitely leading Nebraska in the correct direction, considering they are a little young this year, and they are coming off of an NCAA Finals appearance, but she's definitely got them going in the correct direction. Then back to the Pac-12, we have Savvy Simo, who surpassed 1,000 digs, which is also quite amazing. Savvy, I believe, is only is a junior, but she's definitely stepped up her game, so especially for the Bruins, who are still trying to make that NCAA tournament. Then we have Jessie Harris of Princeton, who reached 1,000 assists in her collegiate volleyball career. Harris comes from Corona Del Mar, and she's pretty darn good. She's a pretty darn good setter as well. She's very good, honestly, and considering that Princeton's had an up and down year, she's definitely steering Princeton in the correct direction, and Harris is one of the reasons why Princeton is going to the NCAA tournament, because without her, that offense is kind of lost. But definitely a big shout out to Harris. And then we also have Maddie Makasak of Georgia Tech, who surpassed 2,000 career assists, so big shout out to her. Then we have Danielle Serrano, who is the all-time block leader at Florida Gulf Coast, so that's another shout. Then Maddie Fields of Wyoming is now the all-time dig leader, so big ups to her. And then to conclude, we have Hannah Locken, who became the 5th player in Baylor history to tally 3,000 career assists. And once again, Baylor, coming off of a big win over Texas last week, is one of the reasons why they're pretty much almost a shoo-in for the NCAA tournament, and that's mainly because of Hannah. And I'll be honest with you, setter is the most difficult position to play, because your sets have to be perfect, otherwise they'll get called for a lift violation or they'll get called for a double, and that's basically a free point for the other team. And also, you have to time your sets pretty well, otherwise if you run into the net, that's a net violation, or if your foot surpasses the center line, it's a center line violation. So honestly, it's tough to be a setter, and that's definitely the toughest position in all of volleyball. If you don't agree with me, fight me about it. But I swear, in the words of Larry B., I will destroy you. In a debatably sort of way. I won't actually destroy you, but to put the cherry on top, congrats to all those milestone achievers. Let's hit the applause button for them. And we've got some people in the chat room, mainly being Larry B. Big shout out to Larry B for tuning in. Thank you again for all that you do, Larry. You are greatly appreciated. As he says, fight on and lance up, as he's a Cal Baptist student, and he's a huge USC fan, just like me. So there's that. All right, now let's jump into the CIF state championship. But first, Torrey Pines did win the CIF Open Division State Championship. However, to get there, it was kind of a difficult and interesting path. Torrey Pines had to get past Mater Dei in the CIF SoCal Regional Finals, which is basically the state semifinals. So, Mater Dei and Torrey Pines both faced each other on last Tuesday at Torrey Pines. Torrey Pines did take the first set. They were just strong from the get-go. This is definitely Torrey Pines' best team by far. They had only 2 losses coming in. And this was one of Mater Dei's down years. I wouldn't necessarily say down, but, they graduated a lot of players from last year's national championship team. So, and Larry is back in the group chat, and let's. And as for Sammy Larry did actually mention Sammy Bricio. Sammy Bricio did go pro for USC's women's volleyball team, and she is the all-time kill leader at USC. So, yeah, Sammy Bricio is going pro, and she's still doing it big. I think she's going pro in Spain, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to check in on that. On how she's doing probably next week, but she's definitely killing it in the pro league. So yeah. So back to Torrey Pines Mater Dei. So Torrey Pines took the first set. They were just straight up the better team. I saw this on a live stream, and honestly, she was just straight up. Torrey Pines was just dominating, and then Mater Dei took a 15-12 lead in the second set when suddenly there was a leak in the roofs of Torrey Pines' gymnasium, and that pretty much delayed the game. So, they were pretty much, the refs and the teams were thinking about calling the game, but then they decided to move it up to Canyon Crest Academy, which is not too far from Torrey Pines High School. So both teams went down to Canyon Crest Academy to finish up the game. Mater Dei was up 15-12, and eventually they were up 22-20. It looked as if Mater Dei was going to even the match at 1 set apiece, but then Torrey Pines just comes back with 3 straight points, and eventually they get to set point, and then Mater Dei saves a set point, but then Torrey Pines just straight up finishes the set with a kill. So now Torrey Pines is up 2-0 in the match. And then the third set, back and forth they go. Torrey Pines has a slight lead. I believe Torrey Pines was up 20-17 at one point, and it looked like it was going to be a sweep. It looked like Torrey Pines was going to sweep Mater Dei. But then the Monarchs turned the tables. They eventually got the lead, and they had a set point of their own, and they converted it. It was 23-23, and then Mater Dei just took the next 2 points, so that was huge for them. Then the fourth set was interesting, as Torrey Pines jumped out early and took a 4-0 lead, forcing a timeout from Mater Dei. Then Mater Dei started to battle back. It went back and forth, and then at 17-17, Mater Dei, there was a point for Torrey Pines, and it looked as if, and from what I saw and from what the refs saw, it looked as if there was a touch off of a kill from Torrey Pines, as Mater Dei attempted to block the shot, but it was slightly tipped. And that was the call on the court, and the refs had to gather together, and they were being a little indecisive, and then they gave the point to Torrey Pines because they ruled that there was definitive evidence from the referees and the line judges that Mater Dei got a piece of that kill off the block. So Mater Dei lost that point, and that was actually the tipping point right there, to be honest with you, because after that point, Torrey Pines just ripped off point after point after point. I think they ripped off 4 straight and went up 21-17, and then that pretty much. And then after that bad call, Mater Dei just couldn't recover. They tried to scrap together a late rally, but it just wasn't good enough as Torrey Pines took set 4, 25-20, and that was that right there. So to me, here's some takeaways from that match. For starters, this is definitely Torrey Pines' best team in probably all of team history, because this team had 36 wins going into that game, and they only lost twice. One was to La Costa Canyon, which, they're also a good team. They reached the CIF State SoCal Regional Division 1 finals, which I'll be talking about a little bit later. And their other loss was to Vista Marietta, which faced La Costa Canyon in the CIF SoCal Regional Division I Finals. So, to me, Torrey Pines, this was definitely Torrey Pines' best game, and they were just better prepared. And to me, Mater Dei just didn't play Mater Dei volleyball. I don't know what it was. They had that second set. They were just 3 points away, and they just couldn't close the door. They allowed Torrey Pines to get back in. I was told that there were some questionable calls because of the state playoffs, but teams gotta learn to play through those calls. And, Mater Dei did this in the CIF Southern Section Championship against Redondo Union. There were some bad calls, and, that rattled them. And that's not how you win a state championship. How you win a state championship is you play through the bad calls. I don't care what it is. If you're blaming the refs, or you're just making excuses, or you're using them as a scapegoat to possibly get away from your team's not so great play, then you're not playing sports correct, in my opinion. So to me, I think Mater Dei was not the better team. I mean, I don't know if it was the moving of the site, or if it was the leak that stalled them out a little, but they just were not themselves. They were not the Mater Dei volleyball team that I expected to actually push it to 5. Because here's what it looks like. Here's what it looks like if Mater Dei takes that second set. If Mater Dei takes the second set and then they take the third set, they're up 2-1 in the match, and then they have Torrey Pines on their heels. And then say Torrey Pines takes the fourth set, then it goes 5. Mater Dei, more times than not, is really good when it comes to matches that go to a 5th set. Their only kryptonite was Redondo Union, and maybe Marymount, but, that was in a best-of-3 match. But still, Mater Dei, more times than not, wins those best-of-5 matches. And some of those best-of-5 matches they've won in the past came against Torrey Pines, where in the state playoffs, that Mater Dei was up 2-0 in the match. They were up late in the third set, and then they allowed Torrey Pines to take the third set. Then the fourth set, they were up, and then Torrey Pines took the fourth set, and then Torrey Pines was up in the 5th set, and then Mater Dei won that match in 5. This was 2 years ago, where Mater Dei reached the state playoffs and then lost to Archbishop Mitty in the state final. So, as for the present, you just can't really let those bad calls rattle you. You just can't. Don't be that type of person. Those Mater Dei cannot be the type of team that blames the ref or that lets the ref rattle them, because you just can't. You gotta play through that. It's just plain and simple. As for Torrey Pines, they just straight up looked dominant. They were just straight up the better team. No debating on this one, because they just were. They just were. And to that end of that match, I will say that Torrey Pines, having the home court really helps, considering they were the number 1 team in the bracket, in the Southern California bracket. But, for Mater Dei, they've won at Torrey Pines. Like I said, Mater Dei won at Torrey Pines a couple of years ago, and overall, I think Mater Dei could have won this one as well. They were very much in that second set, and they were very much in that fourth set until, they let that debatable call rattle them, and you gotta tune out the bad calls. You just gotta let it flow, let it go, and just move on. As for their stats, for Mater Dei, they were led by Zaria Henderson, who had 16 kills. Mia Tuaniga had 11 kills, and Meg Brown had 10 kills. And Lauren Tarnoff was right behind Brown, as she had 9 kills. Serving-wise, Colby Bennett had 4 aces for the Monarchs. But that was it. Those were the only aces that Mater Dei had. They didn't get any from Tuaniga, and none from who has a booming top spin jump serve. So it's quite shocking that an underclassman would get all of those aces. But, to each his own. And total blocks, Mater Dei blocked a lot of balls. Lauren Tarnoff had 5 total blocks. Brown had 3 blocks. Tuaniga had 2 blocks. Vanessa Zolg had 2 blocks, and Henderson had 1 block, and Regan Merck had 1 block as well. And digging-wise, they only had 1 player in double digits when it came to digging, and that was Jordan Schilling, who had 16. Colby Bennett was close to double digits, as she had 19 digs, and then Tuaniga had 9 digs. She was 1 dig away from a triple-double, as she also had tallied 35 assists, as Mater Dei still ran their 6-2 offense, which basically resolves in 2 setters coming in and out. As for Torrey Pines, they had a balanced attack. They had 5 players in double figures when it came to kills, as Maya Satchel had 15 kills, and then Megan Kraft had 14 kills. And I've seen Satchel play. Satchel actually played at Corona Del Mar, which, she played at Corona Del Mar High School, and then she transferred over to Torrey Pines, which I don't know the reason why, but I don't really care. Then Delaney Maple had 11 kills. She was definitely huge for Torrey Pines in that game against Mater Dei. And then Trinity Durfee had 11 kills as well for Torrey Pines, and then Sophia Callahan also had 10 kills for the Falcons as well. And then serving wise, Torrey Pines had 7 aces, 3 of which came from Delaney Maple, which was definitely huge for them. And then they didn't block the ball all that well, but they still got some good blocks from Megan Kraft and Sophia Callahan. They only had a grand total of 8 total blocks, so it makes me wonder how Torrey Pines is able to win that game despite not blocking the ball that well. Digging-wise, Maple had 15 digs, Kraft had 10 digs, and then Christiana Braswell had 14 digs. So there's that stat, and then setting-wise, Carly Dial had a whopping 52 assists for the Falcons, as they only ran a 5-1 offense. They didn't run a 6-2 like Mater Dei did. So Carly Dial had 52 assists, and then Braswell had 5 assists. So overall, Mater Dei dominated the blocking department, but Torrey Pines was just better overall in every other statistic. And eventually, Torrey Pines was able to take their talent to the CIF Open Division State Finals, where they faced Marian Catholic, who is also one of the top teams in the nation, as they are the best team in Northern California. And in that state final, once you know it, Torrey Pines swept away Marian Catholic. So this is the 2nd straight year a team from Southern California won the CIF State Championship in the Open Division. So Torrey Pines is a lot to be proud of. Like I said, this is Torrey Pines' best team in quite a while. So I gotta hit the applause button. So in that matchup against Marian Catholic, this was another it was more of the same for Torrey Pines. They were more dominant against Marian Catholic than they were against Mater Dei. The second set, however, was a bit close, as it was won 25-23. But set 1 and 3 were won 25-11 and then 25-14. As for the stats, quick 3-set win equals not so big stats. Maya Satchel and Delaney Maple each had 10 kills. Satchel is definitely a talent, and Carly Dial had 5 kills. Not bad for a setter, and she also had 26 assists to boot. So that's huge for her. Serving, blocking wise, they didn't block all that much. But they did dig the ball quite a bit. Maple had 9 digs, almost a double-double. And then serving wise, they really had a lot of aces in this match. Carly Deal had 5 aces alone. Delaney Maple had 3 aces. Christiana Braswell had 2 aces. And then Parks and Chan each had an ace as well. So Asia Parks and Chan, Bella Chan each had 1 ace. So if I had to say, I'm pretty much going to say that this was pretty much a dominating effort for Torrey Pines in regards to the serving department. Because if you could serve the ball well, volleyball is a little bit of an easier sport for you all, for most teams. Because serving is definitely one of the bigger things in volleyball. Because serving and passing are both the key factors when it comes to volleyball. So that's definitely something right there. That's a grand total of 12 aces in that match. That's absolutely amazing. So yeah, if you definitely can win a match like that if you serve the ball well. So to wrap up the CIF Open Division, the CIF State Open Division, Torrey Pines was straight up the dominant team. Now, they are the number 2 team in the nation, according to Max Prep's stats, and it has not been updated. It was last updated on November 22nd, and currently Torrey Pines is second in the nation at 39-2. Well, they're 38-2. They're right behind Padua Franciscan of Parma. They are from Idaho. Padua is from Idaho, as they finished the season 28-1. Their last game, they lost to St. Francis de Sales, which beat them in 4. So this begs the question, is Torrey Pines the national champion? To me, I think they are. I think Torrey Pines is the national champion. It's debatable, and the Max Preps computer said it all depends on what gets added into the Max Preps computer. The Max Preps Excellent 25, on the other hand, has Torrey Pines still second behind Newcastle, but the Max Preps computer has them slightly behind Padua in terms of strength of schedule. So, to me, I definitely think that Torrey Pines is the national champion. This is one of their best teams ever. I'm biased because I am a California guy, but Torrey Pines, they definitely deserve that championship. 39 wins in one season is friggin' amazing. Like I said, their only 2 losses were to La Costa Canyon and Vista Murrieta, which I'll be talking about in a little bit. But again, Torrey Pines is the national champion, hands down. They had all that talent. They were able to get over the hump being Mater Dei. I thought they were going to struggle and have to go 5 with Mater Dei, but they got over that hump, and that's huge right there. And they're one of the few teams that beat Redondo Union, other than Mater Dei and a few others as well. So Torrey Pines definitely deserves to be the national champion, no doubt about it. No questions asked. So I'm going to put a bow on that CIF State Open Division title and move on with it. Now let's go into the CIF State Division I championship match. But first, the SoCal Regionals between La Costa Canyon and Vista Murrieta took place. And Vista Murrieta, they had to be road warriors because they were seated quite lowly. I believe they were seated 5th in the CIF State Regionals. And they had a long road to get past, as Vista Murrieta had to go through quite a bit in order to make the CIF final. The first round of the SoCal Regionals, they had to get past La Jolla of Country Day. Took them out in 4 sets. Then they upset Miracosta on the road in 4 sets. Then they upset the top seed Sierra Canyon in 5 sets at Sierra Canyon. Then this match against La Costa Canyon, Vista Marietta took down La Costa Canyon in 5 sets. The first set was 25-20 Vista Marietta. Second set was 25-21 La Costa Canyon. Third set was 32-30 in favor of Vista Marietta. Fourth set was 25-23 La Costa Canyon. And then fifth set was 15-9 in favor of Vista Marietta. So that was a huge win for them. And then their final match, the final between Vista Marietta and Campo Lindo, Vista Marietta won that one as well. As Vista Marietta won that one in 4 sets. The first set was 20-25 Campo Lindo, and the second set was the huge tipping point of the match. Vista Marietta was down 24-19 in set number 2, and it looked like Campo Lindo was going to take a 2-0 lead. And then what happened was that 24-19 lead turned into 24-20, then 24-21, then 24-22, then 24-23, then 24-24. Suddenly, Vista Marietta was still in it. And then eventually, the two teams went back and forth until Vista Marietta managed to break through and win the second set 32-30. That set alone helped turn the tide for the Broncos, as they took the third set 25-22. Looked like it was going to be another photo finish until Claire Little stepped her game up. And this girl, Claire Little right here, she is only a freshman. She's already committed to BYU. Let me say that again. Claire Little, a freshman outside hitter for Vista Marietta, is committed to BYU. Just going to straight up say that. So Claire Little definitely stepped her game up. And then eventually Vista Marietta took the fourth set, 25-21, and that was that. Vista Marietta won the state championship. And Claire Little, she had 30 kills, which is tied for the 12th most in CIF state championship history. So that was huge for Vista Marietta, and that is kind of considered an upset, but Vista Marietta was like the 5th seed in the SoCal regions, while Campo Lindo was the 4th seed, they were the number 1 seed in the NorCal region. So that, to me, that's considered an upset. So I definitely gotta give the applause button for Vista Marietta, representing the Inland Empire. And in addition to Vista Marietta becoming the second, Vista Marietta is actually the second Riverside County school to win a state championship in girls volleyball. Last year, it was their league mate, Temecula Valley, which won the state title last season. So that was huge. And it's actually Vista Marietta's 3rd state title overall, as they won a state title in boys track and field in 2015 and 2016. So that's really huge. That's really big for Vista Marietta. And Claire Little, back to her, she had half of Vista Marietta's kills, and she hit a blistering 490 in that match. And she had 11 kills in the second set alone. So that was definitely huge for her, And even Campo Lindo coach John Vuong said she was an absolute beast, and she had no nerves. And this is a freshman we're talking about. This isn't a sophomore or junior or senior. This is a freshman, mind you. It's absolutely bananas. I'm very impressed. I was very impressed by her. So definitely gotta give. So once again, that's definitely a huge shout out to her, considering she was just straight up phenomenal. There's nothing more to say in regards to that. So once again, let's give her hit the applause button one more time. Big shout out to her, and she's also the
the Riverside County Girls Athlete of the Week. And she's also up for Southern California Player of the Week. Once again, that's definitely huge. And a correction on that, it's not the 30 kills isn't the most for any player. It's the 12th most for a freshman. The 30 kills in the CIF state final are the 12th most for a freshman, and it's tied for 12th most kills in a state title match in any division. So once again, that's definitely huge for Claire Little, and she's committed to BYU. You can't say enough good about her. So that's absolutely amazing, and she's definitely doing it big for Vista Marietta. I remember Vista Marietta was one of the more forgotten teams. I remember they were under the radar. They were under the radar quite a bit to begin the season, and no one knew if they were going to be good or not. And then suddenly they come out with this big upset over Torrey Pines in the Durango tournament, and they took off from there, and they also kind of and I think the problem with Vista Marietta was that they underachieved in the Dave Mose tournament. That's where they greatly underachieved. I think they finished last in pool play. Yeah, they finished last in pool play to Marymount, Great Oak, and also Orange Lutheran, which leaves a lot to be desired for them. So, and they also lost to Chaparral, but Chaparral is one of the more improved teams in their league. So, and once again, they are one of the more tougher. They are one of the more. The Southwest League is also one of the more tougher leagues. When it comes to California. So there's and they still won that league. They went 9-1. They just lost that one game to Chaparral. So there's that pretty much. And to close the season, when it comes to the girls volleyball season, it's great to see someone challenging Mater Dei. But now this begs the question for Mater Dei: is their reign over? Will they be back in the CIF Southern Section Finals next year? Will they be back in the state finals next year? Many of those questions, I still think they can. Considering they have a very good head coach and they have some good complementary players returning, such as Zaria Henderson, Cadence Gronsky, and Katie Cook, Colby Bennett, just to name a few. And Jordan Schilling returns as libero. So, but we'll see what happens to them next year. Anything can happen in the time frame of from now until next August. So there's that. Now let's get into the college volleyball season, as I took quite a bit of time when it came to that little spiel. And then we also have that 2-minute mishap where I accidentally forgot to turn on my mic, which, I gotta laugh at myself for that. But yeah, you gotta learn to laugh at yourself a little. People make mistakes, and we're only human. So now let's get into the NCAA college volleyball scene, where there are still 7 spots remaining in regards to the automatic qualifiers. So we're going to start conference by conference. We're going to start with the Big East Conference, as they have their conference tournament this week, and it's going to be a good one. Well, actually, no, they don't. They don't have a champion named. They don't have a conference tournament. But I will say this: I don't get how Marquette is playing 2 opponents this week. I'm seeing their schedule right now, and they're playing Villanova a 3rd time. I don't know if that's a scheduling error or if that's a makeup game, but it's totally weird. I don't know why. It's very weird. And yesterday they beat Providence, but I don't know why they're playing a second game against Villanova, a second match against Villanova. As for Creighton did beat Marquette last week. They did prove me wrong, which is unfortunate for me. They beat
Marquette in 4 sets, and that pretty much clinches the Big East Conference championship for Creighton. And they should have that crown locked up, because they have the tiebreaker over Marquette, unless the Big East Conference doesn't do that, which would be quite stupid. But anyway, this week, Creighton takes on St. John's. That game could be tough, considering St. John's is the 4th best team in the conference, and they're still having a solid year, honestly. I feel that St. John's can win that one, but Creighton is playing on a whole nother level. But this conference has definitely been one of the more unpredictable ones, considering Villanova swept Creighton in straight sets. At the same time, that was at Villanova. And I just definitely think that Creighton's going to get the job done. It will be in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but I definitely think Creighton gets the job done. That match, I see Creighton winning that one no more than 4 sets. So chances are, I think Marquette, Creighton's going to win that one. And even if Marquette, who does have to play Villanova a 3rd time, which I don't really understand, even if Marquette does somehow win and then Creighton somehow loses, Creighton should be the conference champion. I'm predicting they clinch the Big East Conference. So now let's jump into the Big Ten Conference, where that conference is very, very close. Like I said, Wisconsin is out in front. They are still in first place, with their lone loss being to Ohio State. They just recently swept Iowa, and they also swept Nebraska. Sweeping Nebraska, both of these games were at home. Sweeping Nebraska is very impressive. If you sweep Nebraska not once but twice in a year, you're definitely doing something correct. And it's the same Wisconsin team that lost to Washington twice in one season. So yeah, this Wisconsin team is definitely shaping up to being the potential conference champs. This week they have a huge test on the road against Penn State. Now, this one is a crucial game for both teams. If Wisconsin wins, they are the outright the Big Ten Conference champion. Plain and simple. They punch their ticket into the NCAA Tournament. Nothing really matters. Now, if Penn State wins, Penn State and Wisconsin will both be tied for the Big Ten in first place in the Big Ten Conference with just one more game to go. And here's the deal about that. Penn State would have the tiebreaker over the Badgers, and that would be crucial for them, because that could give them the Big Ten Conference title. That said, however, Penn State also has another big matchup after their game against Wisconsin, as they play Minnesota at home in University Park, Pennsylvania, on Saturday. So that's definitely a huge... Penn State has a huge week ahead of them. And here's the thing about that. And Wisconsin has one more match after their matchup against Penn State, as they also play Rutgers, which, I'm pretty sure they'll take down Rutgers. Rutgers is unfortunately at the bottom of the Big Ten Conference. So I pretty much expect Wisconsin to win that game against Rutgers. Penn State's the one that's very concerning, because if Penn State wins that one and then they beat Minnesota, Penn State would have the outright conference title, because theoretically they would have the outright conference title in terms of tiebreaker, because they would have beaten Wisconsin. The only way I don't see Penn State winning the outright title is if they beat Wisconsin and then they lose to Minnesota. And here's the interesting part. Let's say Wisconsin actually loses both games. Let's say they have a bad game against Penn State, and then Rutgers plays their best volleyball and Wisconsin doesn't play their best volleyball. And let's say Penn State wins out. Or no, let's say Penn State loses to Minnesota. Wisconsin would be 17 and 3. Penn State would be 17 and 3. Nebraska, let's say they win out their matchups this week, would be 17 and 3, and Minnesota would be 17 and 3. Let's say Minnesota wins out their games as well. So that would mean a four-way tie for first place in the Big Ten Conference. And keep in mind, this is a Power 5 conference, so I don't know what the guidelines of a tiebreaker would be. It would probably be like an early morning tiebreaker, or maybe it would just be draw names out of hats, or maybe it would just be a quick a quick best-of-3 matchup. A little mini Big Ten tournament between those four teams. I doubt it would probably go it would be a best-of-5 matchup because they'd have to do it early on. So we'll see. I'm pretty sure Wisconsin's gonna beat at least Rutgers. They have to take down Penn State first because Penn State they're still hungry for the Big Ten Conference title, and the Big Ten Conference has definitely been very unpredictable. Purdue has, they weren't looking too good early on, and then suddenly they ripped off this big upset win over Nebraska, and then Illinois has had some big wins. Nothing is guaranteed. Even Ohio State, who has had a solid year, has taken a bit of a tumble, and suddenly they've lost 2 straight, and their NCAA tournament hopes are kind of in jeopardy. So there's pretty much that. But overall, as for Wisconsin-Penn State, I'm going to take... It's a tough one to predict. If I had to predict, I'd take Penn State in 5. I hate to say that to Wisconsin, but I think Penn State is going to take it in 5. Penn State has perennially been a conference contender when it comes to the Big Ten. This time around, I think Penn State is going to show Wisconsin that they are the true OGs of the Big Ten Conference. Overall, I think Penn State, and it's tough to win at University Park. It's tough to win at Penn State because they have a lot of roaring fans, and it's just it's quite the tall task. There's only been one team that's taken down. There's only been one team that's truly taken down Penn State without showing a whole lot of fight, and that was Pitt, which is the number 2 team in the nation. So there's that. So I'm taking Penn State to beat Wisconsin in 5, and then I'll take Penn State to beat Minnesota in 4 on Saturday. I think Penn State gets a big win on Friday, then they ride the wave of momentum into Saturday, and then they pretty much at least guarantee themselves a share of second place. However, since Nebraska did beat Penn State this year, I would presume Nebraska would be seated a little bit higher due to the fact that, Nebraska, Oh wait, no. Penn State is 16. It would be 18 and 2. So never mind. Scratch that. Penn State wins out their games. Wisconsin will beat Rutgers. I will assure you that. If they don't, then maybe I'll buy myself a Rutgers shirt. But who's to say? So moving on from the Big Ten Conference, let's go to the Pac-12. Pac-12 has just been a merry-go-round. Another Power 5 conference, as Stanford has pretty much guaranteed themselves a share of the conference title. They can win it outright with a win against Washington. I want to say it was Washington State. It should be Washington State. Yeah, it is Washington State because they were going to play Washington again, but then it goes to their interconference. It goes into their rival, their true conference rival being Cal. So as for Washington, Washington is only 2 games back of Stanford. The problem is that Stanford needs to lose out, and then Washington needs to win out to have the two share, and then have Washington get the automatic qualifier, because Washington did beat Stanford. So just gotta remember, you all need to remember that. But Stanford is pretty much controls its own destiny. That said, Stanford does have to go on the road to beat Washington State. So it'll be a little tough, but I pretty much got Stanford winning that one in no more than 4 sets. I think Stanford is back to being their dominant self with Catherine Plummer returning to the lineup, and I think Kendall Kipp is definitely back as well. Washington has definitely tried to keep pace with them, considering they can't finish anywhere lower than second place. They can tie for second place, but they can't finish lower than second place. Even if they lose out. Which that would be detrimental for Washington, because one of Washington's opponents is Washington State. But before Washington plays at Washington State, they have to face Cal at Washington. So I think Washington wins that one in 4. Kara Bejima has definitely been a huge bright spot for the Huskies, and she's just a force, man. You just can't say enough good about her. She's a hard-working player, and she definitely will get the job done for the Huskies. No matter who it is, no matter where it is, Kara Bejima is just a freaking wrecking ball. You can't say enough good about her. And Washington pretty much clinches second place in the Pac-12 with a win against Cal, or if Washington State loses to Stanford, which is probably going to happen, So Washington is in control of second place. For third place, it really doesn't matter, considering second place and beyond is basically an at-large bid for the NCAA tournament. Third place is occupied by Washington State and Utah. Utah plays Oregon State at home, and then they play at Colorado. I can see Washington State winning both of those games, considering Washington State has been a steady team. Not Washington State. Utah has been a very steady team this year, and they challenged They took Stanford to 5 sets. They almost won that one, but you also have to remember that some of Stanford's matches that they had to go 5 were without Catherine Plummer. So you also have to factor that in, and I think, and Stanford to me is back. Everyone get out the way, because Catherine Plummer, Kendall Kipp, Megan McClure, Audrina Fitzmaurice, Jenna Gray, who's setting up the offense, and Morgan Hens, who's digging those balls, are here to stay. So, and Madeline Gates is coming in at middle blocker as well. So I think Stanford's going to clinch the outright conference crown this week. I don't see Washington State beating them. If they do, anything is possible, but Wazoo just isn't on the level that Stanford is. Stanford is back to being their dominant self. So Stanford's going to clinch the Pac-12 conference. As for the SEC, there is a tie for first place in the SEC between Kentucky and Florida. However, Florida has the tiebreaker, Kentucky has the tiebreaker over Florida, considering they beat them twice this year. So, and with one match remaining, one of these teams, it's pretty much going to be one of these teams ending the season on a high note. So, to me, I think Florida has the tougher path to finishing atop of the SEC. For starters, Florida plays Arkansas on Wednesday. That's definitely a win for them. And both of these games are at the Swamp, or the University of Florida. And then their final game of the season is against Texas A&M. Now, A&M is a very much a tough one. Texas A&M is having a very good season, and they are one of two conference teams to knock off Kentucky. The other conference team, I believe that was LSU, I want to say. But overall, it's going to be tough. I think Texas A&M can really give Florida a run for its money, and Kentucky's only losses in SEC play was to Georgia and Texas A&M. So overall, Florida has its work cut out for them. That I feel they can beat Texas A&M. On one hand, they can beat Texas A&M. On the other hand, however, I think Texas A&M can challenge the Gators. I think Florida wins this battle against Texas A&M in 4 sets. However, I got Florida winning in 4 just because they have a lot of They have a lot of offensive firepower, such as Paige Hammonds, Thayer Hall, Rachel Kramer. It's just to name a few offensive potential for the Gators, and they're just straight up playing. They can't afford another loss, otherwise they have to apply as an at-large team. But overall, I think Kentucky has the tiebreaker over Florida. As for Kentucky's final 2 games, they face LSU. And then they are at LSU, and then they are home against Ole Miss. Ole Miss is near the bottom of the. Well, they're having a solid season, but they're nowhere near the top of the standings. And LSU, they're having a decent season in conference and an okay season overall. I could see them getting in as an at-large team, or at least in the NIT. But I think Kentucky can. If Kentucky gets past LSU, they should be all good in the hood. I think Kentucky sweeps past. They'll sweep past LSU, and then they'll sweep Kentucky, and then Kentucky will sweep Ole Miss, and then Florida. I'm pretty sure is gonna sweep Arkansas, and then they're also going to beat. They'll beat A&M in 4. It'll be a close one, though. I'm pretty sure Texas A&M is going to give the Gators all they can handle. So, but I definitely can see Texas A&M making the NCAA tournament. There's no doubt about that. So overall, I think that's pretty much going to be. I think that's pretty much Kentucky's title to win. Is pretty much their conference to lose. So there's that. So I'm pretty sure Kentucky gets into the NCAA tournament automatically. I just don't see how it wouldn't make sense to have another tiebreaker matchup. And for me, I would think even if the two played a third matchup, I'm pretty sure Kentucky would win that one. Kentucky has had Florida's number all season long, as we have now approached an hour. All right, now let's get into the Big 12 conference standings, where Baylor took down Texas. Number 1 went down as Baylor took down Texas in 5 sets. Baylor took the first 2 sets. Texas rumbled the next 2 sets. And then ultimately, Baylor took the 5th set. So now Texas and Baylor are tied for first place. Texas only has 1 game this week. They are at Iowa State. As for Baylor, their home games consist of, they are at West Virginia and at TCU. West Virginia is at the bottom of the Big 12 conference ranking, then TCU is pretty much near the bottom. I pretty much see Baylor winning both of those games in straight sets, but for Texas, they have a tough matchup against Iowa State. Iowa State is somewhat good. They're not the best. They're not on the level of Texas and Baylor and Oklahoma, but Iowa State could possibly give Texas a run for their money. Coming off of a tough loss, they got to get back to work, and, it's tough. losing a game like that. And believe it or not, all of Texas's losses have come in 5 sets. So if you're going 5 with Texas, then you might win. Now, as for Texas's matchup against Iowa State, that's going to be at Iowa. So to me, I think I'm a firm believer of bouncing back after a tough loss, and that's what Texas did after losing to Baylor. They took down Kansas in 4 sets. Even though it was at Texas. It was in Austin, Texas. I can see Texas. I'm going to say Texas takes down Iowa State in 4 sets. I think Texas fully shakes off the loss over Baylor and takes down Iowa State. And now here's the deal. Now if Baylor wins out and then Texas wins out, those two are co-champions. That said, I'm pretty since the two split their season series with one another, I think it would go by sets, which would mean Texas occupies that category because they've won more sets between them and Baylor. If not, then it'll be a 1v. They'll play a tiebreaker match where just like Princeton and Yale did. But to me, Texas and Baylor are looking really interesting going into the NCAA tournament, and it's going to be really, really cool if those two teams meet in the NCAA tournament. It would also be really cool if they saw each other in the final, but one can only hope, though. Who knows? Maybe they will, maybe they won't, but we'll see how it goes. If the two do meet again, then if the two definitely meet in a tiebreaker game, I'm definitely taking Texas to win that 1 in 4. So honestly, I think Texas will have Baylor's number the second time around. So give me Texas in 4 if the two meet each other again. So now let's go into the Big Sky Conference, where the Big Sky Tournament is this week. It'll be number 1 Northern Colorado against number 8 Montana, number 2 Weber State against number 7 Southern Utah, number 3 Northern Arizona versus number 6 Idaho, and then number 4 Montana versus number 5 Sacramento State. Now, hopefully, I can actually predict. The correct outcome for this. I will say Northern Colorado wins the tournament, and they barely beat Weber State. To me, I think Northern Colorado is just the strong team, not just record-wise, but when it comes to this conference as a whole. Their only loss was to Northern Arizona, which, they had to play at Arizona, and, stuff happens. We're only human. And Northern Arizona, to me, is the dark horse of this tournament. I think Northern Arizona can make noise. If they get another crack at Northern Colorado, then Colorado better watch out, because they're definitely a team to watch for. The tournament will be played in Sacramento. So also another dark horse could be Sacramento State, since they are the host team. But to me, I think Northern Colorado is just will win this one. I think if they face Weber State, they'll win it in 4. If they face Northern Arizona, they'll win it in 5. And if they somehow lose, then one thing that wouldn't surprise me is if Sacramento State upset them, because they to me is the dark horse, and there were a lot of conference tournament upsets from last week, which I'll also recap as well. So and the last non-qualifier. And the last conference that is that has not had its qualifier is the the Missouri Valley Conference, which the Missouri Conference tournament begins this weekend, starting on Thursday with Bradley versus Valparaiso, which is number 4 versus number 5, and then Illinois State versus Evansville, which is number 3 and number 6. The top seeds of the tournament are number 1, University of Northern Idaho, and number 2, Loyola of Chicago. I'm taking University of Northern Idaho, or Iowa, whichever it is, UNI, to win the Missouri Valley Conference tournament. I mean, Uni has pretty much just been the class of this conference. And honestly, I think this team can pretty much get the job done they can pretty much get the job done in this tournament. Only one team has had an answer for them, and that was Loyola. But Loyola, to me, is too inconsistent, and last week it kind of showed when Uni took down Loyola in the second half of conference play. And then also Loyola lost to Illinois State, so that's another thing as well. So that's why I'm picking Uni to win this tournament. So now let's recap the conference champions from last week. So last week's conference champions were Northern Kentucky. Let's start with the Horizon League. With first being Northern Kentucky over Milwaukee, winning 3-0. This one really surprised me. I was very surprised to see Northern Kentucky win this tournament, considering they had to take down Wright State, and they also had to take down number 2 seed Milwaukee. I was very surprised that Northern Kentucky was able to go on an upset streak. This is what I mean by any team can win any conference tournament, because the conference tournament to me is a second chance is basically a second chance for all teams. So honestly, so chances are, a lot of teams will get a second chance at some of these other teams. So we'll see how it goes, though. And then, all right, now next tournament is the Conference USA tournament, where West Kentucky beat Rice in the final 3-2. This wasn't surprising to me. West Kentucky has been dominant this year, and Rice, they were up there. They were right there with West Kentucky, and then that first 5-set loss kind of deterred them, and then they lost to 5 sets to West Kentucky as well. I still see Rice getting into the NCAA tournament. I just don't see how they don't get into the NCAA tournament. They have a win over Texas, for goodness sake. So now let's go into the Colonial Athletic Conference, where Towson beat James Madison. This kind of wasn't a bit of a surprise. Towson is was the number 1 seed, and then James Madison, they're good, but they just weren't as good as Towson. Now let's go into the A-10 conference tournament, where VCU beat Dayton 3-1. Not too surprising. VCU was the top seed. Dayton was the second seed. To me, VCU is just one of those dominant teams that is the class of their conference, and it's pretty much no surprise. So there's that. Then now let's go into the Big South tournament, where Winthrop beat Campbell in the final 3-0. The only thing I'm surprised about is that Campbell was able to upset High Point. But again, High Point kind of lost their big outside hitter, being Abby Broadstreet. Winthrop pretty much took Campbell to the shed, unfortunately. But props to Campbell for getting that far. Now let's go to the ASUN Conference, where Kennesaw State upset Florida Gulf Coast 3-2. So pretty much the week after Danielle Serrano was the all-time block leader at Florida Gulf Coast, Kennesaw State pulled an upset, beating those
beating Florida Gulf Coast, which it's not too surprising, but, Kennesaw State, I thought Florida Gulf Coast was the more dominant team. Don't get me wrong. Nothing against Kennesaw State. I definitely think they're a phenomenal team. However, Florida Gulf Coast has pretty much owned that conference for the most part. Now let's go into the American Conference, where UCF beat Cincinnati in the final 3-1. This, to me, is no surprise, honestly. I knew it was going to be UCF versus Cincinnati, but I thought it was going to be the other way around. UCF, I believe, dominated in the west half was pretty much strong in the west half of their conference. I knew they were going to get into the final. I don't think SMU had what it took to take down the Knights. So good on UCF, University of Central Florida. Now let's go into the American East Conference, where Albany took down Hartford in 5 sets. Not too surprising, except Hartford pulled the upset against New Hampshire, and then they pushed Albany to 5 sets. Hopefully Hartford gets into the NCAA tournament. I really would like for them to get into the NCAA tournament. So, hopefully. Next week we'll have all the answers. Now let's go into the Mid-American Conference. This was the crazy conference right here. This was the Looney Tunes Conference, where we had a bunch of upsets. Ladies and gentlemen, we had a lot of upsets. Ball State beat Bowling Green in the final 3-2. And Ball State and Bowling Green upset Miami and Central Michigan in the semifinals. That is quite amazing. I'm very, very, very impressed with how Ball State and Bowling Green with how those two teams pulled the upset. I hope Bowling Green does get into the tournament. It also depends on if Miami gets into the tournament. I don't know if Mid-American Conference is a Power 5 conference. I highly doubt it, but we'll see how it goes. Then we have the Northeast American Conference, where Sacred Heart beat Central Connecticut 3-0. It's not too big of a surprise, but except I was very surprised Central Connecticut took down Robert Morris. I thought Robert Morris was straight up the dominant team, and then that final loss in conference play really must have sent them the wrong direction, because you lost to the 4 seed. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing, Robert Morris? Now let's talk about the OVC tournament, where Southeast Missouri took down Morehead State 3-0. Not too surprising, except Morehead State took down Jacksonville. I thought Jacksonville was going to win that tournament, but Southeast Missouri, because Jacksonville is a cut above the rest when it comes to the OVC. But Southeast Missouri, Morehead State upset Jacksonville State, and then Southeast Missouri was too much for Morehead State. Now let's talk about the Patriot League, where American beat Army West Point 3-1 in the final. Not too surprising, except Army West Point upset Colgate, which I thought was going to be American versus Colgate Part 3, which was disappointing. But American gets that automatic bid to the NCAA tournament. Now let's go to the Southland Conference, where Stephen F. Austin took down Sam Houston State 3-1. Not too surprising. I gotta give it up for Sam Houston State, because I thought Houston Baptist was going to upset Northwestern State, but that wasn't the case. Northwestern State gave Sam Houston State a battle, but it wasn't enough. But in the end, Stephen F. Austin just took Sam Houston State to the shed, unfortunately. Quite the shame, but that's how it goes. Now let's talk about the Southwest Athletic Conference, where Alabama State took down Prairie View A&M 3-0. This one was another surprising conference to me, because Alabama State, they were a 5 seed, and then they upset the 4 seed, and they upset the 3 seed, and then they also upset the 2 seed. Yeah, they not only upset them, they swept them. So I'm very surprised that Alabama State was able to sweep away the number 2 seed. So big ups to Alabama State for clinching a spot in the NCAA tournament. Now for the Sun Belt Conference, this to me wasn't a surprise. Texas State beat Coastal Carolina. Again, Texas State is
I saw Texas State at Long Beach State, playing at Long Beach State. Cheyenne Husky is a straight-up monster, and it's not just Cheyenne Husky, it's other players as well. Karen Cheesom, who's coached at Texas State for 40 years, is straight-up amazing. She is a mastermind, even at her age. You know, that Texas State team could be a team to watch for. So there's that, in my opinion. Now for the Summit League, Denver took down Omaha 3-1. Omaha did upset top seed South Dakota State 3-1 in the semifinals. Denver put on for their city. It's not too surprising that Denver won the tournament, but honestly, you know, Omaha beating South Dakota State in the semis was the big shocker. Denver winning the tournament isn't all that big of a shocker, considering they are the host team. Then we have the West Athletic Conference tournament, or the WAC, where New Mexico State beat Grand Canyon 3-0. This, to me, once again, is not a surprise. You know, New Mexico State is pretty much the class of the Western Athletic Conference. But I will say Cal Baptist should have been in that tournament. I don't know why they weren't featured in the WAC tournament. I think they would have done some damage, especially after how Utah Valley upset UT Rio Grande Valley. I think if Cal Baptist was the number 5 seed, they would have upset UT Rio Grande Valley as well. And I think they would have given New Mexico State a battle. They would have, as I said last week, Cal Baptist is the only team to have pushed New Mexico State to 5 sets in conference play. So that's definitely impressive by Cal Bap this year. And hopefully they get into the NIT. If not, then they do return 10 players from this year to next year's team. So do watch out for those Cal Baptist Lady Lancers. And for once again, for you, Larry, I will say this. Lance up! So that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this one. Thank you all for tuning in to another edition of Set Point. I apologize for the technical difficulties, and I apologize for switching around the times, but thank you all for tuning in. You all are amazing. And with all that said, cue the music! And once again, this is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, signing off, y'all. Have a great and amazing week. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone, and enjoy your volleyball this weekend. Because remember, the NCAA Tournament selection is this Sunday, so don't miss it. And you can find me on Twitter at Teran Rodriguez1. My first name is spelled T-E-R-A-N, and then my last name, Rodriguez, has a G, not a Q. And then I have the number 1 at the end of my Twitter username. Once again, that's at Teran Rodriguez1. Once again, thank you all for tuning in. Have a great rest of the week. Happy Thanksgiving, and enjoy some volleyball this week.